think this pandemic crisis, as we all know, is like no other crisis, right? Which requires more coordinated action from many countries around the world. And in the case of ASEAN, the region has been able to come up with measures that are decisive and targeted, and in a sense that we're able to address issues related to health preparedness in our region. And at the same time, if you look at what countries have done so far, they have been able to implement a number of measures that try to mitigate the impacts of this pandemic. And this is very much evident in terms of the different measures that have been implemented so far in terms of fiscal stimulus packages, in terms of monetary and financial measures, and more importantly, the type of measures being implemented to address sectors that have been heavily affected by this pandemic. So I would say that in general, the response has been very decisive and timely, but we also recognize that this pandemic is not easy. We have to make sure that actions remain very decisive, and we have to make sure that all these measures are also timely.
Before covering on the mitigation strategy, first of all, do you agree or do you believe that ASEAN somehow can be said that we are, let's say, less adversely affected than other regions in the world amidst this pandemic?
I would say so, but again, this pandemic is affecting the global economy, Erwin. Therefore, ASEAN is not spared. In fact, when you look at what has happened after the pandemic, it has affected adversely a number of critical sectors in ASEAN, including trade, tourism, transport, and aviation. And it has also adversely affected the consumer and business confidence in the region. And if you look at the first quarter growth in the region, I think growth has indeed sputtered. We've seen contractions, for example, in countries like Singapore, Thailand, and the Philippines, whereas other countries in the region continue to have positive growth. But again, the growth rates are far below than the previous levels. I would say that ASEAN is not spared because this is a global pandemic, and this is a pandemic that is affecting the global economy.